Our next presenter is Tom Miller. Now, if your brain is feeling pretty good, then that's all right, because Tom will fill it with a whole lot of information that's going to make you just go spinning. Your eyes will be going, wow, there's too much. Tom's part of the Transition Foundation, is particularly interested in peer-to-peer tribes, and is really going to talk to us about the opportunities that are emerging in the online technological world that will actually take some of the control out of, big business, government, things like that, and actually maybe release a lot more of the tiny house movements, the eco-village, the actual cooperative or communal living opportunities that emerge. So wherever Tom is, I think he was here, he kind of came out. Come here, Tom, come here. Now, Tom, do you want to stand here, or are you going to... Yeah? Great. That's yours.
Oh, that's all right. I don't need to change it.
Do you want to hold it?
Yeah.
So, Tom.
Hello.
I just got one question before you start.
Yeah.
What's your favourite food?
Spaghetti bolognese.
Yeah, spag bowl. Awesome.
Pizza's pretty good as well.
Yeah. And if you could mix the pizza and the spaghetti into one, that's a superfood right there.
I just like ham and pineapple on a pizza, and that's it.
Ham and pineapple. That's not even real pizza if you ask an Italian.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, can everyone make Tom feel welcome? Thanks, mate.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just basically, I've kind of been on a blockchain journey for the last 6 years, just working full-time in blockchain. And so I'm going to kind of just sort of share where that small journey, and then also sort of where it's led up to the events that I'm at right now. But originally an engineer, just so you know a little bit about my background, and been into different sort of online internet marketing ventures over the years. Got completely obsessed about blockchain and the change it can make for society. Even joined the local Let's energy trading system maybe 4 or 5 years ago in Brisbane. And just been fascinated by the financial system and how that all works, to the point where I'm now a director of a financial services law firm, and sort of leading the charge in the future of money and what we call this stuff, these trading tools. So it led me deep into deploying blockchains for entire countries. I deployed a blockchain for the country of the Philippines, for the 4th largest bank there. And gone through all the different pains of what this blockchain stuff all means. And I'm not actually going to talk too much about blockchain, because I spoke about that at the last event we had, and it went over people's heads, and understandably so. But I'm more going to be talking about the this is more of a content session about the future of financing of anything. So tribes will be able to get together and be able to help each other with these larger costs in life. And what is that framework, or how is it all going to work, and how does it work with governments and banks and all the legal systems around the world? And basically we're one giant tribe on this planet, the humanity tribe, and we've all got these different shared stories, and we separate ourselves by geolocation, and you can just think of it like different tribes all around the world. We've been separated by countries, so geolocation. Then there's also purpose-driven tribes, like the tiny houses. We just happen to be a tribe located here who have the same purpose, and we care about tiny houses and sustainability. And I've been living on a sustainable property in Udlo for the last 3 years, really trying to push that purpose along. But tribes have all different sorts of reasons, and maybe we label ourselves as a tribe or not. And then there's peripherals on those tribes who link into other tribes, but there's a whole sort of information technology industry that's trying to facilitate these tribes express themselves quicker and faster across the globe, and that's basically leading to why I created blockchain in the first place. That blockchain was, I like to say, there's no mistake that Bitcoin was created and it went live 3 months after the GFC. It was obvious that maybe engineers and computer scientists were a little bit unsatisfied with how the financial system was going at the time, and so it was kind of their answer. It was the first attempt answer, and it came out in 2008, and it's been really successful. The whole sort of scope of that project was, how can you facilitate a transaction, a Bitcoin transaction, across the globe without a third party like the state involved or a bank involved. And that happened really successfully. And you've heard things like Bitcoin and you've heard things like Ethereum. It was just hugely successful. And people have now tried to take that even further and like, well, hang on, that's not really what happens in nature. If you and me want to do a transaction, it's actually just you and me. We don't even have to get permission from an outside blockchain or piece of software. You and me should be able to agree our rules and do our transaction. And so that's where peer-to-peer has had a huge influence on this whole blockchain online movement as well. And so peer-to-peer takes decentralization a lot further. And you know, I went on I spent a week asking people what decentralization means, and everyone has a different answer. So that's a very sort of like a subjective term in itself. And then I got very excited by, I mean, you know, what originally started all this is, you've probably heard of like BitTorrent and downloading of movies on the internet. That's actually a peer-to-peer system where two peers connect and they share information, and you know, they just happen to be transferring about half the media on the internet right now, the BitTorrent protocol. According to a report I read in 2014, so that's not true. But so then it's like, okay, we've got all these tribes, and then then the tribes enter into agreements with one another, and that's what happens on these shared properties. The law firm that I've been working for the last 3 months, they deal a lot with property, like conveyancing, and so dealing with these types of deals and what they look like. And so I've been learning a lot more about how they work. I'm not a lawyer, by the way. I'm just a blockchain developer guy, but trying to, you know, we've spent so many years working on projects outside how law industry secrets work, and so it made a lot of sense to work inside a financial services law firm, which has been hugely empowering, and I think it'll be really empowering for this movement in the future. But so once a tribe comes together, they basically make agreements, and they need some type of a shared sort of storyboard to make those agreements and sort of enshrine them in sort of like a database that can't be changed, so that when you go back and look at those agreements and all the disputes happen, you can sort of work out the story there. But there's been, you know, if you think about like tribes as in companies like ANZ Bank or Commonwealth, they all have their different types of systems on how they record events and ledgers. And so it's been sort of very evident in the blockchain space, well, what is the shared sort of like framework that we'd all use to agree how events happen? And I'm not talking about just money events, I'm talking about just events in general. Like if Tom hands a banana to you, mate, then, you know, that's an event. Or if Tom hits his shoe on the floor, that's an event. And, you know, what events are we going to record? So something a bit more holistic, not just, you know, something tied to a fiat transaction all the time. Because if you think about it, tying every event to a fiat transaction is basically a very skewed way of looking at the world. So there's been an accounting system called REA accounting. You can look on it on Wikipedia. And it's basically, REA stands for Resource Event Agent. So if you think about that, it's kind of like in programmer world, they call it a schema. And it's basically a standard way of recording events. So I'm just going to take you through a few examples of this. And this is kind of like, the reason why I'm talking about all this background information is because this is leading into how to make, you know, financing and approvals from local governments really easy. And to basically create a shared framework or language that, you know, we can have ongoing communications with other groups of people, other tribes, like the local government. So REA, think of that. Think of resource event agent. So every event has resources involved, generally. That could be a time of an agent or thinking processes. It has the event, which is the story, and also the agents or actors involved. And if you can kind of fit all of that, if you think now of an Excel table, are you all following me here, by the way? Yeah, cool. All right. So think of an Excel table, and you would have resources, events, and agents all on each line. So every event, every row on that table is an event. It's a log. It's a way of keeping a record of things. And that's what a tribe really needs, because otherwise you start having, you know, he said, she said, and then there's no sort of standard way of doing things, and especially when you're moving from like pre-contractual into contractual, and then post-contractual and into finalised. You kind of need this sort of like whole life cycle to go through. And it's been becoming very, very clear to me. So why are we talking about an events management system? So the other big part of all this REA accounting system is that we need an events management system, because this is how, in the blockchain space, in certain countries around the world, we've actually been proving self-regulation. So we don't need to be regulated. We can self-regulate ourselves, and that's happened successfully in Australia with the passport system. There is an element of self-regulation, and that's possible to push that through here as well. And in Japan, the crypto exchanges have actually they self-regulate. They don't have government involved or departments involved. They actually prove that everything is kosher. So so this event system is basically, think of it, it's like a holistic accounting system. And say, for instance, there's an event where somebody moves a trailer onto a property, or somebody hands $5 to another person, so there's two actors. The resource is the $5. You could also count people's time as resources, and the event is the story that happened between those agents. So then if you can think about it over time, like think of it even in the pre-contractual stage of all of these agreements, the log for the agreement book, you can start to think that some of these events would be repetitive events. And repetitive events, you could then start creating a picture or a dashboard about the repetitive events. So events like, Josh went around and cleaned all the dirty toilets for the whole tiny houses park, or whatever it ends up being in the future. These goals that we have. And now all of a sudden you can record events alongside. Have you guys heard of a zero accounting system or QuickBooks and all that sort of stuff? Well, that's all accounting just for financial events. But now it creates a platform or a framework to have real events, which is actually the real thing that provides value, in the same sort of like framework as financial fiat currency events as well. Does that make sense? So then it allows us to start looking at this, all of these, the life cycle of a tiny house, or a property, or a country, or a tribe, like everyone living on a street, or a tribe like everyone in a suburb, if you want to think of geolocation, and looking at it truly for what the events actually are, and not what it's going to make in the long run, or basically looking at all of these events in a completely holistic way. And we can start drawing new, or making sense of these events in new different ways. And this is really important, because this is one way especially on how we can start proving self-regulation. Look, okay, these are the events that happen, giving the regulators access to what we're doing and all the events, and getting them to see, oh, okay, yeah, we're not a bunch of hippies, we're not just going to collapse on ourselves. So next, what are we up to? So then this comes to, once you can start making sense of these events, and it might be you can start tracking labour, because we've got other types of capital as well, and I've just been on a project where we've been calculating labour for the last 3 years. You can then start looking at, well, okay, if banks want this sort of amount of data, and we have a lot of flexibility at a financial services law firm, we can start creating or making sense of these events that a tribe does for a year, or 6 months, or 3 months, or a month, to start getting financing, and start talking in a language, or a common grammatical language that a bank would understand, or a local government would truly understand. And we can actually bring them along on the journey as well, because a lot of their pains that they're dealing with, they just don't know how to deal with them as well. And so we can sort of be that shining beacon of light, I see, as to bring them along on a common framework that we can all agree on, or at least agree the events. So that could be financing, or it could be permissions from local council, or from the higher above, and forming. And the harmony of that group is going to be based on, whether people believe that those events were the true events. So, there's going to be a little introduction process there to getting used to it. But think about a log, and if you're not happy with one of those rows on that list of events, in your tribe, in your family, or your street, or your neighborhood, or your country, then that's when you can put a comment in there. And we kind of do it in a skewed way right now online. But once you can have sort of mathematically verified information that can manage fiat currency as well, then we'll have a commenting system where people can say they don't agree with that one event, and you can have a whole dispute process along down that track as well. So now we're cool. So you all understand REA accounting. It's just a way to account for events. So it's not just normal counting, where you're accounting, what we think of as accounting for fiat, but it's accounting of events. And if you're accounting for things, then you can start bringing about accountability, which is the true sort of meaning of that word. So then you can start talking about things like, well, who has permission to look at these events? Is it only people in the tribe, or are there outer membership levels where maybe an outer person, like someone from a regulatory background, from their regulatory tribe, want to keep a tabs on what's going on? So you can start configuring things, and then you can start sort of like pre-contractual. You can start having showing all the events that led up to the contract and why the contract ended up being how it is, especially if it's a group buy or something like that. And then, if there is disputes later on, you can start looking at how to the best mediate that dispute. So, but really what this comes down to, like what's going to drive the value of these contracts or these new movements, is you guys understanding your own value, and me understanding my value, and us being able to describe ourselves in these holistic accounting systems in a valuable way that collectively all of our list of events or agreements, because if we all decide to make an agreement together and we record that in a row on an accounting system, we become more valuable together, and that becomes valuable to a local government because all of a sudden we're sort of like amalgamated, or we are sort of aggregating our purchasing power, our demand, our vote, a lot of different things, and we can start acting a lot sort of like wiser, or maybe not wiser, but we can start acting more powerfully the way the current tribes work, like a community. A company. So then it's like, well, how do we show this value to a government or a bank? A bank would find, if they could see a little bit of proof of what's going on with a tribe, and we could give them a little bit of peripheral access and show them how credible we are and how integral we are, they'd be attracted to us as well. And because we've joined together in some type of contract, and it could be multiple organic contracts that happen in these sort of decentralized or peer-to-peer accounting systems, we can start having bargaining power or start negotiating what's fair. And we can bring them along on the journey as well. Like they might also enjoy moving into this new way of accounting, because the current accounting is leading us towards just a real scarcity-based mindset, which causes a lot of problems. So, like last time I spoke a lot about technology, and I didn't really want to speak too much about that. I more want to, a lot of what comes before a technological implementation of anything is, if we go and build something, like, is it going to be valuable? And so I've been working with a guy called Stephen Alexander for maybe the last 2-3 years, and worked on some banking projects with him. And he deals with digital value alchemy, that's what he calls it. Anyway, for the last 30 years, he's been, I have him on every project that I work on now, because he goes and calculates what's the value before, or what's the pain that people are dealing with. And then he works out if a new capacity or a new legal agreement was in place, or a new sort of consent agreement, or whatever, if a new thing was in place, what would the pain be then? And we can use that collectively. We can take everyone's individual pains, and then we can add them all together, and then that can produce a report that you can take to ANZ Bank, or you can take to, especially coming from a law firm, take it to a local government. And so this is been our sorry, it just locked out. This has been our formula for, this is how we got, started building blockchain for banks, because they were pretty anti-blockchain until they realized, actually there's a way that they can save on regulation costs. So they have a lot of compliance officers, and so we showed them a way on how they can basically remove all compliance officers. And so it's just about looking at what's all the pains that people are dealing with in this ecosystem, and what value would they bring if they agree to certain agreements. And from there, then you can start moving mountains. So how does this equate to video? So that's pretty much it. That's all I really wanted to share. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, digital value alchemy, yeah. Oh, so that's yeah. So Jimmy will send I just recently did a podcast on REA accounting, and that's interviewing a group of people that are actually building out the framework online for society. And I will get Jimmy to send that out for you, and then Stephen and myself will be doing an announcement on the value course, which allows each individual to calculate their own value and then also work out how they can combine their value into a report. And that's pretty much it, yeah.
Yeah, so I have a question.
Yeah,
sorry,
go for it.
just kick the bottle.
What?
Oh, wow.
Oh, hello.
No, go for it.
Oh, yeah, my question, just very briefly, is so how do we hook into more of this stuff on digital value alchemy and, Stephen Alexander and what you're doing, etc.?
So to tell you more about it?
Well, how do we find out more?
Okay, yeah, so I'm going to send a video out. I'm going to get Jimmy to send a video out.
Okay.
But you can Google Stephen Alexander, but he's going to be the one running the course. And the idea is that, people get skilled up in being able to... have you guys seen what spider charts are?
No.
It's a standard chart in Excel. What the course is going to teach is show you all the pains that someone is dealing with, and be able to map those pains on a little spider chart. And then we go through and we have a brainstorm session about, what capacities or agreements or things could we put in place that would make that pain smaller, and then that would produce a report that we can calculate all our pains together, and if we can show that it goes down or it allows the local government to spend less fiat or make more fiat, then we can kind of do what we want to do. Because that's the normal mechanism that most people act from in society.
Got a question? Great.
With regards to blockchain, it's the technology itself goes over a lot of people's heads as it is. It's a fairly new technology, it's emerging, but it's extremely important. With regards to communities and the value that blockchain can bring to eco-villages, smaller communities and things like that, where do you see that going in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you think it's going to be fairly easy to integrate it into the existing structures, or do you think it's going to be a completely new format that's going to need to be developed and implemented?
I think it's going to be the standard way you interact with websites now. You'll just go to a website that will have these sort of record keeping systems. So you'll put your name and email address in, and a password, and you'll just log in and you'll have members, shared on the same log, and think of them as tribal groups. And you'll just go and create different circles depending on what tribes you're part of, and you'll be able to work out how much time you want to put into each tribe and record everything. And then from there you can start having fair conversations about what's fair, because that's the big issue. Everyone's worried about, what is fair in these arrangements. And so if we start with a holistic accounting system first instead of the fiat accounting system, then we can start opening up people's eyes about maybe what's fair. Go for it, yeah.
Sorry, another thing. So
just be a normal website for most people. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, with regards to the technology, I don't think a lot of people are going to realise they're using blockchain.
No, they won't. Yeah.
It's just going to be implemented. With regards to the value, though, that it brings, do you think tokenization would be the way forward?
I think so. Just to give you an example, so on that accounting system I was just explaining, you're going to have events that are the same event that happened the week before, and there's all sorts of events like that. It could be fiat currency transfer events that are the same as the week before, or it could be changing toilet systems or mowing lawns or cleaning gutters, all these different events that are going to happen. You can start batching those events, And then once those events start getting batched, and then you can start batching them around from other communities as well, you could have a shared agreement that every time there's one of those events, a new token gets created for some reason, and that token starts entering into a governed ecosystem. Then you can start creating trading tools like that, because there's a lot of value in knowing that if you're moving into a community that's always going to have service toilets or whatever. That's just a simple example. That's like sort of pre-recognized value, and that can be traded as a token as well. So that's kind of the spurning or being born of tokens being created. Yeah, but as long as tokens are backed by something real, instead of just something fake. Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
They're the sort of questions that make me realise how dumb I am. Did you explain much about blockchain today, Tom?
No.
Anyone have any idea what he's talking about when he says blockchains? I knew there'd be the shake like this. Have you got, like, as if you're talking to me, right? What is blockchain?
Yeah, so...
10 words or less.
Joking.
No.
Blockchain is no different to the way our brains record events now, and our brains communicate to other brains. It's literally exactly the same. So if I hand you my phone, and we've both recorded it with our brain, but you guys are all present, so you all recorded it in your brain as well. So later on, if you say you didn't give me my phone, if you say like,
you didn't give me
I want my phone back, I'll be able to go and ask you guys and say, well, did I hand my phone to him? So it's like it's a shared ledger, and you're all checking your database, your brain right now, and or universal consciousness, however you want to think about it. But and that's blockchain. So now we can't obviously use our brains to record every single event that happens, like every baked bean that gets created. So we use computers to do it, and we just get other computers to record the same event as well.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
The answer to your question, his question is a shared ledger.
So if you can't quite hear that, it was just in answer to my question to Tom, a shared ledger.
That's the answer.
Oh yeah, I agree. The blockchain industry has been describing themselves as a shared ledger since the start of blockchain, but people still don't understand it.
It's good, thank you.
And you're saying it's not just about the currency of money, it's barter of time and effort and energy in different ways. And that's what you mean by value, not just the monetary value, but
Yeah, definitely.
the value. So there's various things going on here, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. That's what information technology is trying to provide. Yeah.
So it's transparency, but it's also this what are we valuing? Not
Yeah.
just money as the overarching mechanism for value, but other things.
Did everyone
Yeah,
hear that?
definitely. Totally agree. Sure.
People at the back hear that? It's not all about money. It's not just about an economic sort of transfer of funds or whatever. There's a whole, it's taking into consideration a lot bigger.
All events, yeah.
Yeah. Other thoughts, questions, things you want to just throw out to my big brain friend Tom?
Question? So is this going to make a huge difference to the evolution of ecovillages?
Will this make a big difference to the evolution of eco-villages was the question.
Yeah, so have you guys heard of a number called Dunbar's number?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's basically the limit. It's like the limit that our brain can handle in sort of a group of people. So it's about 150 or 130 that, physically we can manage only about 150 relationships. We can remember, keep tabs on people and who owes what or something or who owes us something for about 150 people. So blockchain allows us to, as we've grown and expanded on the planet as one of the biggest species, it allows us to raise that limit of our collaboration. And so to answer your question, yeah, you'll just be engulfed by this blockchain capacity that just sort of, it raises the Dunbar number on communities around the world. So it's just in your words, it's just, we're all just going to have shared ledgers for whatever group we're part of.
Well, it's events that we share.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Would you call it a paradigm shift?
It's a massive paradigm shift.
Maybe you should, just a suggestion to perhaps frame some of what you're saying today is quite complex and some of us have never heard those words before.
Yeah.
Just to help frame the talk, just call it's a different way of thinking.
It is, yeah.
Basically going about daily transactions and recording those transactions.
Yep.
And actually yesterday, if you were here yesterday, you'll know that one of my 4 words for the day was paradigm. So there it is, right there. It's come back to haunt me. Other questions or thoughts or comments that you'd just like to throw out? All right. So I said before Tom came out that your brains were just like going to go, oh my goodness. Yeah. And was I right? Yeah. So could you join me in just saying a massive thank you to Tom?